This board's very, very interesting. It is going to cost, I wrote down the conversions here because I got a lot of comments on one of my videos saying that they prefer if I both said CAD and USD. So I'm going to try to do that from now on. The one thing I'll give criticism right away, but you kind of have to go through each individual part and unfortunately make decisions from there. So the board in total Canadian dollars is going to be $429 in total if you decide to go with the plate. And then in US dollars is $250. So it's about $250 for this board. It's a 75%. This is their V2. They've made this board in the past, but this is completely revamped. And they have this really interesting suspension system. They're calling it literally a suspension structure that you can kind of do two ways. I can't even describe this because I have not yet actually done this board. And I've never seen this particular way to mount a keyboard. But it's interesting. I think when they approached me about this project a little while ago, they really told me that this is something that they've been working on for a little while now and they really wanted to show this off. If this was just another gasket mounted keyboard at $250, I think it would have been really boring. I'm glad they went with something new. I hope it sounds good. I hope it looks and feels good. Very cool board. Some cool color combos. If you go with like the electrophoresis colors, they obviously cost more. And then you can buy like different weight bars and stuff like that, like mirrored PVD and anode. And they have different styles of anodes with different finishes. So we'll see what we got in the box today, but it starts at $250, which to be honest, that's not that bad. $250 for something I would say has a lot of uniqueness to it. There is going to be one change they let me know ahead of time. They sent me a PCB. It's a prototype PCB. They've since added more stuff to the PCB. So there will be 7U support. I don't think the prototype has 7U support, but the final units they assured me and they said, can you please mention it tonight because we already did it and we just didn't ship you one. But yeah, they said they have 7U support now. Yeah, there's not a lot of plate options, which was a bit of a bummer. I saw they only have 2. Let's take a look at what's inside the box here. We have some foam. We have, I don't know what this is. I don't know what any of these are. We'll open those up in a second. They come with a screwdriver, which is nice to see. I don't know if I'm going to use this today. This is something else that they briefly spoke about as well, which is their hexagon internal foam, if you want to call it that. It's not really foam. It just kind of feels like a piece of cardboard or some sort of material here. I have no idea. It's like a fiber material of some sort. You can kind of see one of the hexes fell off. It's interesting. We can play around with it maybe. And we have our PCB. Again, this only has, I think, 6.25U on this. So this looks like a full silver unit. Oh, actually this is pretty looking. Some of those suspensions are already pre-installed there. That was a terrible appeal, I'm so sorry. This has a really cool look to it. Chaosera has done some pretty interesting things like the Heracles and the Cupid. Interesting side profile too. Definitely a bit more stylized. From the photos, I liked it a lot, but I always tend to say like those are renders, they're made to look good. This is interesting. It has a bit of a taper going down and a bit of an arch. A bit more stylized, and then it kind of has this like PVD'd kind of foot. I guess it depends on what you get here, but you know what I really like? This is kind of inset a bit, where they kind of have this gradual taper downwards over here. So this kind of acts as its own piece. This gives the bottom a lot of character. Also, I like that they're not afraid to use some screws. Yeah, pretty standard with the little weight option there. I don't know what to call this exactly. Little foot option for a weight. It's a little higher. It's about 20 mil. But you know what? Again, 20 millimeters. I always say I like my keyboards to be 20 mil or lower. If this is going to hit that tail end of 20 mil, I'm happy with that. I do want to open this up right away to kind of show you guys that internal. Does this come off? It does. So this piece. Okay. We open it up to more screws. Never mind, I feel better about this now. So this piece is a separate piece. By the way, this is a sponsored stream because they're letting me keep the board. Is that gonna affect anything? Absolutely not. Now, the mounting style. So this is what I'm most interested about the keyboard. First of all, you can see that there's no mounts, from what I can see, underneath the spacebar. Thank goodness. Here is again the prototype of the hot swap PCB. This is going to be redone to include a 7U spacebar afterwards. So it kind of has these tabs that are suspended from these points over here. So it's like a fancy, I don't even know if you would want to call this a top mount. They're calling it suspension mount. I don't know if this is considered a top. It might be considered a top mount, sort of. You're still adhering it to the top frame, just with suspension on it. It is very new. That's what got me really excited about this board, because it's not often we see like truly unique mounting systems that are new. I appreciate all the effort put into this, by the way. I hope the team at Chaosera understands that, like, no matter what this ends up sounding like, it's always cool to see people experiment with new things. I hope this is not a flop in any sort of the stretch of the imagination, but... And then there's two ways that you can mount it. So this is how it would sit from the, like, this is how it would look from the top, right? You could actually flip these suspensions over. And then just to go back to my little cheat sheet here, one is basically the arch bridge mode and the other one's suspension bridge. So very, very interesting. I believe the top is suspension and the bottom is arch. So if it was suspended from here, this is considered suspension. And if it's flipped over, these little copper things are flipped over, that's considered arch mode. So for now, we're gonna leave it in its stock configuration because I think that's what I want to try. The $250 price point. Not only are you getting a bottom, a weight for this, these separate side pieces over here, a top frame, two of these that are CNC'd, and another weight. It's a lot of pieces for $250. So you can technically make this a plateless build. High key, I really wanted to do today. You know, I'm gonna give some criticism to this. I think having north and south facing switches, as you guys can see on the top row, is a little weird. It doesn't look like a terrible PCB. You don't get split, you get ISO, which is nice to see. Split left, step caps, so you're kind of missing everything but 7U, which they said they're gonna add. You're right, it could be because of the leaf springs. Maybe they do cause some sort of interference with this. This would be super cool in a solderable version, which they do sell, but man, I would have loved to try this in, actually maybe the Obscuras will allow us to do plateless today. I think the only thing I'm like not vibing with 100% on this board is the lack of options for plate material. Like, I don't know if I want to use a plate for this. I'm gonna make the assumption that you can do this in plateless mode, because they are selling a solderable PCB as well. Let's start off with suspension mode. Another small bit of criticism, they did put out a build video. I will admit, I think having documentation over a video is better in the long run because the video is a bit harder to follow. I think these are feet. These are for this, but I'm not sure what this is for. And this is our daughter board here. What are all these? And this is if you have the plate installed. These are like little gaskets for the plate. All right, and then we're putting these on. These seem to go with the double barrel here at the bottom. So that should be facing the bottom in any orientation that we do. And these just clip on. These could be just some sort of like addition or some sort of like extra part, maybe? Oh, these are extra parts. These go underneath the suspension so it's not metal on metal. This is to kind of force break or separate and isolate the suspension on its own. These have extra sets of slots that these would go into over here. However, I think for maybe the configuration I'm doing right now, maybe we put these in first because they take a bit more force. Again, if we can't do this in plateless, we'll just quickly go and grab the plate. You may actually need the plate though. I think the plate will also help secure the board. Maybe that's the reason why they're saying required, but hey, we're trying it. So now we're gonna screw everything in. What are the problems with the hot swap plateless? Well, two things. They could be loose, and it could cause the switch to rattle in place, giving you a really bad sound signature. Ooh, this has some flex to it in plateless mode. Oh, you know what? This might be one of the few boards you can visually see that side profile a little bit too from this side. Usually everything kind of gets covered up. I'd say one of the more distinct side profiles without being like overly tacky in a while. It's definitely stylized, but it's done so I think in a tasteful way. So this is Obscura switches, plateless build. We can swap out spacebars to see what we like. This is the suspension. This has no foam, nothing like that. I feel like I might actually need to put the foam on the bottom. I'm not sure if this is bottoming out. It does feel like something's perhaps touching the bottom. I do like the sound profile. Again, I'm not sure if this is intended to be used. Yeah, I think something's bottoming out. Let's put the plate foam on, and then perhaps we can quickly build this with the plate. Plateless though, interesting. Sounds good. It's a nice sounding keyboard. Let's put the plate foam in first. Then I want to try putting a different spacebar and just testing it plateless still. So just so you guys know too, I don't think there's going to be a different sound profile between arch and suspension. It's really about feeling. That's what most of the reviews, well, the one review I said anyways, and people in the comments agreed because there's other commenters who have built it. Seems to be more of a typing preference thing. So I'll show you guys why we might actually just have to switch to plate. The gaskets are kind of slipping through over here. So perhaps we do need to use a plate. Because you can see the gasket's slipping through compared to over there. So we kind of need to reset that gasket. It is pushing through. So I think that's what the gasket tabs are for. There needs to be, I pushed it through even with my hands right now. There needs to be a bit more transparency on that then. Like those are required. Let's build it with a plate now. Shouldn't take too long, a few minutes. All right, so let's put this back in the top frame here. Bit of a bummer that the top mount or the plateless didn't work, but it's okay. A half plate with this would be super cool too. Okay, the Obscuras sound pretty good as the Alphas. Okay, this spacebar is sort of shaped up. I don't mind the spacebar now. I'm thinking maybe we try with a cherry switch just for the sake of trying with what we know. Okay, this sounds pretty good actually. It's comfortable. Oh, that sounds much nicer. That's much more pleasant. Yeah, this is a Nixie. Okay, this sounds nice. It still has a little bit of that FR4 kind of like sound signature to it. Let's try putting the foam inside. Let's actually turn on the keyboard first because I did want to see it, you know, fully on. There is some RGB on the bottom. I don't know how much of that you'll be able to see on your desk. I feel like this is kind of pointless RGB at this point here. I feel like that might have been like an extra $5 they added to the keyboard there, and I feel like that was pointless. Like, it's cool in practice if you flip over the board, but how often are you fucking doing that? I think that's a miss. I think there's some minor misses. Like, that's the biggest miss. Is just, I think that's a waste of like RGB implementation. I think it definitely needs some other plate options for sure. Let's try the foam now. This feels really awkward to implement this here, by the way, guys. I don't love this. I feel like this foam thing is a bit of a weird thing to implement here. I would have cut it a bit more, but let's see how this slots in. You know what? Here is, oh, this is so stiff now though. If this was a little bit stiffer when we installed the plate, like plateless, this was really comfy. When we installed the plate, I think it was the perfect balance. There is absolutely no movement. However, the sound profile on this is, it's actually kind of nice. I might even say that I prefer this. So this is with the plate burn and with the foam. This does not sound foamy at all. The up keys kind of sound dead. I think the foam at the bottom, or that grid foam, whatever material realistically that is, I think that sounds good. I would actually like to know more about this material of foam that they put in here. Hexafiber case foam. No idea what that is. Some sort of fiber. So here's my final closing thoughts with this. I like this for 250 bucks. Okay, we'll start from scratch. I like this for 250 bucks. I think this has a bit more of a unique build. I do think if you don't include that hexafiber sheet at the bottom, this does have a really unique, well, not unique, it just has a medium firmness typing style. You can even switch out those mounting styles to be the arch version, which we don't have that in right now. That'll feel a little bit different too. The hexafiber foam is interesting, or fiber sheet, or whatever you want to call it. It's interesting. It does completely kill any sort of softness this had. It does sound really good. It's pretty unique, I have to admit. I like the way that sounds. It's a good, solid sounding keyboard. 20 mil front height's a little high, but it's not out of the realm of unusable. I don't mind that at all. Very awesome visually. I think this is one of the prettier boards out there right now in terms of 75s available. It's kind of nice. It has a nice side profile with a really cool weight system that you can customize. Where I think this misses is I feel like this RGB at the bottom, which I showed you guys earlier, this is a waste of money. I would have liked to see that just not included in the case, and perhaps the case getting lowered by $5 or $10, because you know, $5 or $10 goes a long way. So I think that's a silly implementation. Overall, the assembly process is fairly straightforward. I do think a written build guide with some visuals to make it simpler for people who aren't having to need to pause and play the YouTube video would make a lot more sense. Where I think this board really is a miss, though, is its plates. You barely get any. There is technically one plate. They do need to correct the wording and the verbiage on the plate for the websites. It needs to just say, it needs to have the word stabilizer because there's a plate mounted and PCB mounted stab version plate there. I really feel like if they included a polycarbonate plate, this could have sounded really good. It already sounds good. I feel like this could have been elevated just a smidge. Pretty fun release from Chaosera here. I did not expect this, by the way. Like, when I saw some of the files that they were sending me, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Seeing the finished project now, it's fun. I think this is a nice project. Yeah, I like the customization you can do with the board too. I think there's a lot of good customizations. They're all making this a 7U version as well, like with the PCB and plate materials here, so plate files rather. But if they're already going in to make this a 7U, please give us some more plates. All right, guys, enjoy, take care, see you guys soon, and love you all. Bye, everybody.